He was late. Again. The clock on the dashboard blinked 9:14 a.m., 16 minutes until the interview that could change everything. His fingers clenched the steering wheel tighter with every red light. His tie was crooked, his shirt was wrinkled, and his heart pounded like a war drum. "Just hold on, Emily," he whispered, picturing his daughter's tiny smile. "Daddy's got this." Today was the day. After months of dead ends, rejections, and ramen dinners, this job wasn't just a paycheck, it was survival. Rent was due. Groceries were running low. And Emily deserved better than second-hand toys and school lunches he could barely afford. This wasn't just about a job. It was about being enough, for her, for himself. Then he saw him. An old man, limping along the sidewalk. His hand clutched his chest, his steps barely holding him up. His eyes were dazed, desperate. No one else seemed to notice. They just drove by. Too busy. Too distracted. His foot hovered over the gas. 10 minutes left. If he stopped, he'd be late, maybe even miss the interview entirely. And then what? Another month of struggling? Another night explaining to Emily why Daddy couldn't buy her that backpack she liked. But that man, he looked like he was about to collapse. "God, what am I supposed to do?" he murmured, heart torn between desperation and decency. Then came the whisper. Not from the radio. Not from the street. But deep inside. "Help him." He swerved into a parking space and jumped out of the car without thinking twice. The man looked up, barely able to speak, but his eyes locked onto his like he'd been waiting for him. Like he knew him. "Son," the man rasped, "you're right on time." Confused, the dad reached for his phone to call 911, but the man gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "No," he said. "You were sent." He didn't know the man he was about to help was a pastor. He didn't know the pastor had been praying to meet someone specific that morning. And he definitely didn't know this stranger would speak words that would echo through his life forever. A prophecy. A warning. A blessing. What happens next will leave you speechless. 3 months earlier, he still believed things could turn around. He was married. He had a job. A decent one, at least. And most nights, he came home to his little girl running into his arms like he was a superhero. But sometimes, love isn't enough. The marriage cracked quietly, not with shouting, but with silence. Long nights. Missed dinners. Conversations that felt more like negotiations. He tried. God knows he tried. Counseling, weekend getaways, prayers whispered into pillows, nothing stuck. Eventually, she left. And this time, she wasn't coming back. She took her things. Her dreams. And his sense of stability. Emily stayed. That was the one thing they agreed on, full custody with him. Her mom said she needed consistency, but the truth was, he knew she just didn't want the responsibility. And somehow, even after all the heartbreak, he was okay with that. Emily was his light, his reason. But being a single dad wasn't just hard, it was exhausting. Mornings were chaos. Getting her ready for school, packing lunches, making sure her favorite socks were clean, all while trying to hold it together emotionally. He barely slept. Barely ate. But he smiled for her. Always. He memorized her favorite cereal. Learned to braid her hair from YouTube tutorials. He attended every parent-teacher meeting, every dance recital. Not because he had time, but because she deserved to know she was loved, unconditionally. And then came the layoff. The company downsized. Budget cuts, they said. He nodded politely during the exit meeting, but inside he was screaming. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, all gone in a blink. He tried to hide the fear from Emily. But even at 6, kids sense things. One night, she wrapped her little arms around him and whispered, "Daddy, don't worry. Jesus is gonna help us." He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spent every day sending out resumes, and every night doubting himself. Was he enough? Could he actually do this alone? He applied for everything. Retail jobs, warehouse gigs, freelance gigs online. Nothing stuck. Most days, he'd refresh his email inbox like it was a slot machine, hoping for a win. But it was always empty, just like the fridge sometimes. He sold his watch. His gaming console. Even his old guitar. Anything to keep food on the table. Still, he made sure Emily never saw the cracks. She believed in him. "My daddy is the strongest," she'd say to her friends. He couldn't let her down. But privately, he cried. In the car, in the shower, in the dark when she was asleep. The weight of it all, the loneliness, the failure, the pressure, it crushed him in invisible ways. There were nights he begged God for just one moment of peace. Just one win. One door that didn't slam in his face. And sometimes, when it got too heavy, he'd go sit in the dark living room after Emily was in bed and talk to God out loud, not in polished prayers, but in raw honesty. I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying. I just need you to show up. And then, one day, that interview came. It wasn't a dream job, but it paid more than anything else he'd seen in months. He ironed his only good shirt, rehearsed his lines in the mirror, practiced smiling like he still believed in himself. He called his mom to watch Emily that morning. She lived an hour away but didn't hesitate. "Go get Em," she said. "You got this." For the first time in weeks, he felt hopeful. Like maybe, just maybe, the storm was breaking. But God had something else planned. Something bigger. Something better. The morning of the interview, everything felt fragile. He woke before the alarm, heart already racing. For once, Emily didn't stir as he quietly moved around the tiny apartment. He didn't want to wake her. This was his moment, and hers, too. If he nailed this job, maybe things could finally start to settle. He dressed carefully, the same shirt he'd worn to his wedding, now pressed with the same old iron that sparked every now and then. His shoes were scuffed but clean. He studied himself in the mirror and whispered, "You've got this." Breakfast was 2 pieces of toast and the last of the orange juice, split between himself and his daughter. Emily blinked up at him, hair wild from sleep. "Are you gonna get the job today?" He forced a confident smile. "I think so, baby." She hugged him like she believed it. And that was all he needed. His mom arrived 10 minutes later to babysit. She gave him a kiss on the cheek, then another one for luck. "God's got you," she said. He didn't respond. Not because he didn't believe, but because belief had been bruised lately. He wasn't mad at God. Just tired. Tired of hoping too hard. He grabbed his keys, his resume, and a pack of gum. As he shut the door behind him, he whispered a quiet prayer. "Just this once, please." The city was already waking up. Horns. Buses. A sky smeared with morning gold. As he navigated traffic, he rehearsed his answers out loud. "Tell me about yourself." "Single father. Reliable. Hungry for a chance." "Why should we hire you?" "Because failure isn't an option. Because I'm not just doing this for me." He hit every green light. Things were looking up. Until he saw him. A man, mid-60s maybe, hunched over near a bus stop, gripping his chest. One hand out, the other holding onto the pole like he was hanging on for life. His face was pale. His legs buckled. 100 cars passed him by. People looked, then looked away. He slowed down. "No. Not now. Not today." He checked the clock. 9:14 a.m. Interview at 9:30. 10 miles left. Barely enough time as it was. He pressed the gas. Then slammed the brake. His stomach twisted. His palms were sweating. He could hear Emily's voice in his head, "Always help people, Daddy. That's what you do." But was now the time for heroism? He stared at the man through the windshield. A flicker of a memory surfaced, his own dad, years ago, collapsing at the dinner table. The ambulance didn't come in time. He was 12. He blinked it away. "This isn't about me," he muttered. But deep down, he knew it was. It was always about who we choose to be in moments no one sees. He looked around. No sirens. No one stopping. The man was now on both knees, swaying. Head down. "Help him." There it was again, that whisper. Quiet but thunderous. Not external. Internal. A command. A conviction. He hit the turn signal, veered to the curb, and parked. His hands trembled. "God, I trust you," he said, out loud this time. He jumped out of the car, leaving his resume on the passenger seat. His legs moved before his mind caught up. As he reached the man, the air shifted. "Sir? Are you okay?" he asked, crouching. The man didn't answer immediately. He looked up slowly, like he'd been waiting. His eyes weren't just in pain, they held a kind of peace, like he already knew what was happening. "You stopped," the man whispered. "Good." Confused, the dad reached for his phone. "I'm calling 911. The man placed a trembling hand on his arm. "No. I'm alright. Just, needed to find you." That made no sense. "Me? You?" He blinked. "You don't even know who I am." The old man smiled. "I don't. But God does. And he told me to wait here. That someone would stop. And it would be the one I was supposed to speak to." The dad froze. Whatever this was, it was no longer just about missing an interview. It was something divine. Something bigger than both of them. The stranger's grip was weak, but his eyes were strong. The dad stared at him, torn between concern and confusion. "You waited for me?" The man nodded slowly. God told me someone would come. Someone who had to make a choice today. Someone with a heavy heart. A chill ran down his spine. The man winced, his chest rising with shallow breaths. Don't worry, I'm not dying. I just needed someone to listen. And you needed to hear. Hear what? The old man smiled, not the kind that says I'm okay, but the kind that says I know something you don't. You're standing in the middle of a divine intersection, he said. Two roads. One leads to what you want. The other to what you need. I don't understand, the dad replied, looking toward his car. I'm late. I have an interview. I know, the man said gently. That's the road you want. But it's not the road that was written for you. The words hit like thunder. He checked his phone. 9:21 a.m. 9 minutes left. His breath caught. Look, I'm sorry, but if you don't need an ambulance, I have to. The man held up a trembling hand. I know this is hard. You've lost more than you've told anyone. But what's been taken will be returned, in ways you can't yet imagine. He narrowed his eyes. Who are you? The man didn't answer. Instead, he leaned against the bench, breathing deeply, like even speaking was costing him. You're a good father, he whispered. But you're scared. You think you've failed. You haven't. You've just been refined. The dad felt his heart twist. He hadn't said a word about Emily. How did this man know? I've seen this before, the man continued. The moment when a person is brought to the edge, not to be broken, but to see the bridge God's been building all along. Tears welled up in his eyes. This was too much. Too strange. Too real. He sat down beside the man without saying anything. The traffic passed like a blur. For a moment, the city noise faded and all that remained was stillness. You chose people over position, the man said softly. You've passed the test. The dad didn't even know there was a test. The man smiled again. God's about to open a door you didn't knock on. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. Why me? Because you're willing to lose what the world says matters to do what heaven says matters. He took a deep breath. I don't know how much more I can take. You were never meant to carry it alone. The man pulled something from his coat pocket, a small, weathered envelope. This is for you. What is it? Instructions. But don't open it yet. Why not? You'll know when it's time. He stared at the envelope, uncertain if this was a dream, a setup, or something sacred. I don't even know your name, he said. Call me what you want, the man replied. I'm just a messenger. They sat together for a few more minutes. No words, just breathing. The man's head rested against the back of the bench, eyes closed. But there was no fear in his face. Just peace. Then, suddenly, he stood. The dad rose too, worried the man might collapse. But the old man straightened his shoulders, suddenly more steady than before. You're going to do well, he said. Just remember, the road may bend, but it never ends when God's the one guiding it. With that, he turned and slowly walked away, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow fading into light. And the dad? He stood there, envelope in hand, still unsure if he'd just helped someone, or been helped in a way he didn't yet understand. He sat back down on the bench, still clutching the envelope. His hands trembled. It felt weightless, but carried the kind of gravity you can't explain. He wanted to open it right away. But something held him back. What if it was nonsense? What if it was something dangerous? But deeper than those fears was a different kind of trembling. The kind that only happens when your soul knows something divine is in motion. He stared at the envelope like it might breathe. Then, slowly, he opened it. Inside was a single piece of folded paper. No name. No signature. Just handwriting, a little shaky, but clear. And it read, You think you are unseen. But heaven has not looked away. The child you protect is not a burden, but a legacy. You've wept in secret. But those tears water the garden of tomorrow. There will be restoration in what was broken. The house that felt empty will be filled again. The job you missed was a stepping stone, not a destination. The door you will walk through will not be one you expected, but it will lead to more than provision, it will lead to purpose. You are not forgotten. You are chosen. He couldn't breathe. Every line felt like it was pulled from his own journal. Things he'd never told anyone. Not his mother. Not his pastor. Not even whispered in prayer. How could this man have known? He looked around instinctively, as if expecting the stranger to still be nearby, watching. But he was gone. All that remained was the city noise, a soft breeze, and a letter that had just cracked something wide open inside of him. He folded the paper slowly and placed it back in the envelope like it was holy. His phone buzzed. A voicemail. He checked the screen, a missed call from the company. He tapped play, heart pounding. "Hi, this is Linda from HR. We're so sorry, but we had to start the interview process early today. If you're still interested, please give us a call back to reschedule. We may still have an opportunity." A strange mixture of emotions surged through him. Relief, regret, confusion. Was this a second chance? Was this the new door, or the old one reopening? He didn't know. But one thing was certain, he wasn't the same man who got in the car that morning. The prophecy didn't give him instructions. It gave him identity. It reminded him that he wasn't forgotten. That someone far greater, had been paying attention all along. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about a job. Maybe this was about becoming someone new. He leaned back on the bench, watching people rush past. Everyone was in a hurry. Just like he had been. Maybe they were chasing opportunities, or running from silence. But now, he welcomed the stillness. He thought about everything he had done right, and everything he had done wrong. And for the first time in a long time, he felt peace over both. Because maybe life wasn't a performance. Maybe it was a journey of surrender. And somehow, this stranger, this envelope, this moment, it all felt like an answer to a question he didn't know he had asked. His mind drifted to Emily. What kind of man did he want her to see? Not a perfect man, but a present one. A man who listens, who prays, who chooses people, who lets God interrupt the plan, and trusts that it's for something better. He pulled out the letter again and read it once more. The job you missed was a stepping stone, not a destination. He didn't know what that meant yet. But for the first time in months, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. He folded the letter again, tucked it into his jacket pocket, and stood. There was something sacred about the ordinary street around him now. Like he'd walked through a veil. The same trees, same traffic, but something had changed. He had changed. And though he had no idea what would happen next, he knew this. When heaven speaks, even the smallest whisper can shake your whole world. And when you're chosen, you don't need to understand the way. You just need to follow the one who does. The apartment was quiet when he walked in. Too quiet. His mom was folding laundry in the living room, the faint hum of cartoons coming from Emily's room. She looked up, hopeful. "How'd it go?" He paused. Then sat down on the arm of the couch. "I missed it." Her face softened, not disappointed, just worried. "Why?" "There was a man on the side of the road. I thought he was having a heart attack." Her eyebrows lifted. "Is he okay?" "I think so. He wasn't hurt. But he said he'd been waiting for me." "For you?" she echoed, confused. He nodded slowly. "He gave me something. A letter. Said it was a message. A prophecy." She didn't laugh, didn't question. Just listened, the way moms sometimes know to. "And?" she asked. He pulled the envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. "You read it." She scanned the page, her eyes filling with tears halfway through. She didn't speak until she was finished. Then she placed the paper on her lap and said, "That wasn't just for you." He looked up. "What do you mean?" She wiped her eyes. "That's for every parent who ever felt like giving up. Every single mom or dad who wondered if God still sees them." "I think he just answered." Silence wrapped around them like a blanket. "But I missed the interview," he said quietly. "And I don't know if I'll get another chance." His mom smiled. "Sweetheart, maybe the interview was never the real opportunity." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What if I made the wrong choice?" She shook her head. "When you choose compassion, you never make the wrong choice." He nodded slowly, but doubt still lingered in his chest. He'd always believed in doing the right thing, but the consequences still weighed heavy. Rent was still due. Bills still loomed. And there was no magic fix on the horizon. Later that night, after Emily was asleep, he stepped outside into the cool air. The stars were barely visible above the city lights, but he looked up anyway. "Was that really you?" he whispered. No answer. Just the same silence that had scared him before, but tonight, it felt different. Peaceful, full. Like maybe the silence wasn't emptiness, but presence. He stood there for a long time, remembering the stranger's words. Remembering the prophecy. Remembering how it had felt when someone saw him not for what he lacked, but for what he carried. Inside, the weight hadn't gone away. But it had shifted. It was no longer a weight of fear, it was a weight of faith. He turned back toward the door, but paused when he saw a light on in Emily's room. He peeked in. She was still awake, hugging her stuffed lion, staring at the ceiling. "You okay, baby?" She nodded. "I was just talking to God." He smiled. "What about?" She shrugged. "I told him to help you not be sad." He walked over and sat beside her bed, brushing her hair from her face. "You know what?" he said softly. "I think he heard you." She smiled. And in that moment, he realized something. He may have missed a job, but he hadn't missed his purpose. And sometimes, that's the beginning of everything. The next morning, he woke up expecting more worry, but found peace instead. It wasn't because the bills were paid. They weren't. It wasn't because the phone rang with a job offer. It didn't. But something inside him had shifted. He got up, made pancakes with Emily, and laughed when she got syrup on her forehead. They danced to old songs in the kitchen. And for the first time in a long time, the weight in his chest felt lighter. He didn't know what to do next. But he no longer felt paralyzed by not knowing. Later that afternoon, he got an unexpected email. Not from the company he'd missed the interview with, but from a different one. A small nonprofit he'd applied to weeks ago and completely forgotten about. "We'd like to talk to you. Are you available for an interview tomorrow?" He blinked at the screen, stunned. It wasn't a high-paying job, but it aligned with his values. Helping people. Real community work. He clicked yes. That same evening, his neighbor knocked on his door. A woman he'd only spoken to a few times. She was holding a box. "These are for Emily," she said. "My daughter outgrew them, clothes, toys. I hope it's okay." He thanked her, holding back tears. How did she know? Why now? Later, when he told his mom, she just smiled and said, "See? The seeds are sprouting." He didn't reply, but inside, he felt it too. Over the next week, little things kept happening. Someone paid for his groceries anonymously at the store. Emily's school called and told him she'd received a full scholarship for an after-school program. He even found a $20 bill on the sidewalk, the same day his gas tank hit empty. Coincidences? Maybe. But when you've walked through silence, even a whisper of kindness sounds like thunder. The interview with the nonprofit was different from any he'd had before. No suits. No rehearsed scripts. Just two people sitting across a table, talking about purpose. The director said something that stopped him in his tracks. "We don't just hire resumes. We hire hearts." He started the job the following week. The pay wasn't glamorous. But the work, it felt real. He was organizing food drives, helping displaced families, mentoring teens. Every day felt like another piece of the prophecy unfolding. He'd come home exhausted, but with a full heart. Emily noticed. "You smile more now," she told him one night. He looked at her and realized, she wasn't just watching. She was absorbing everything. How he responded to loss. How he treated strangers. How he trusted when it made no sense. She was learning not just from what he said, but from what he did. One night, as he tucked her in, she whispered, "Daddy, I think that man was an angel." He didn't know how to answer that, but a part of him believed she might be right. 6 weeks later, everything changed. He was on his lunch break, sitting outside the nonprofit office, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something told him to. "Hello? Hi, is this Mr. Carter?" "Yes. This is Daniel Price from Hope Horizon Foundation. We came across your name through a community partnership. We're currently launching a national program and are looking for someone to lead the outreach division." He blinked. I'm sorry, did you say lead?" "Yes. Full-time. Competitive pay. Health benefits. It's a long shot, but would you consider interviewing with us?" His heart raced. "Yes. Absolutely." He hung up the phone, stunned. The interview was nothing like he expected. It felt less like an evaluation and more like a confirmation, like walking into a room that had been waiting for him to arrive. 2 weeks later, he got the job. When he told his mom, she cried. When he told Emily, she screamed. He moved them into a safer neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but stable. Clean. A backyard. He framed the letter the pastor gave him and hung it in the hallway. Every time he passed it, he smiled. Not because it was magic, but because it was true. And now, years later, he still remembers that morning, the pain, the fear, the decision to stop. And he's never stopped telling that story. Because the moment he chose faith over fear, a door opened. One he never knocked on, but was always meant to walk through. Sometimes, what looks like a setback is really a setup for something greater. He missed the interview, but found his calling. He gave up a moment, but gained a mission. And maybe that's the whole point. We pray for open doors, but forget that God sometimes shows up on sidewalks. We chase plans, but ignore whispers. We beg for answers, but are too afraid to stop when the question finally appears in human form. He didn't get what he wanted that day. He got what he needed. And maybe, just maybe, that's how divine appointments work. So if you're in a season of silence, don't give up. If you feel unseen, unheard, unsure, remember this story. You might be one decision away from everything changing. And that one decision might just be to stop and listen. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs encouragement. And subscribe to One Chair Empty for more true stories that restore faith and inspire hope. Because somewhere out there, there's always one more chair, waiting to be filled by grace.